Let's start with a single, powerful idea. You cannot be controlled by a need you no longer have. Just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence, it's the key to taking apart one of the most hidden systems of psychological control out there. See, today, we're not just talking about being a people pleaser. Nah, we're going way deeper. We're gonna expose the entire architecture of the need for approval. We're gonna show you why that deep human desire to be liked, to fit in, why it's not just some personality quirk. It is a critical vulnerability, one that can be systematically exploited to turn your own self-worth into a currency that someone else controls. All right, let's get into it.
So this statement right here, this is our foundation. It's more than just a clever phrase. It's a strategic principle. What it really means is that any need, when it becomes desperate, turns into a lever someone can pull to control you, right? The person who can give you or take away what you desperately need, they have all the power. And when that need is for something as basic as validation and approval, something literally wired into our DNA for survival, well, that control can become absolute. This is the hidden cost of what we call codependency. It's a trap where our ancient programming to seek social safety backfires and leads to a total surrender of our own agency. And this is where it gets really interesting. When you start framing the desire for approval as a strategic blunder, it changes everything. It's not a weakness, it's not a moral failing. It's a tactical error in how you run your own life. Because when trying to be liked becomes your main goal, you become predictable. And in any system, predictability is vulnerability. It's like you're handing over your user manual to anyone who wants to manipulate you. Every choice you make gets filtered through what will they think instead of what's right for me. And that's an open door for exploitation. You've basically just announced to the world that the price for your compliance is their approval. Okay, so let's break down what this trap actually feels like from the inside. We're going to move from the theory to the day-to-day reality. This is all about understanding the massive cost of getting stuck in this pattern and how a totally natural drive for connection can mutate into a complete loss of who you are. You know, what's fascinating here is how these things all feed into each other, creating this vicious cycle. It starts with chronic anxiety, this constant low-level hum of fear about what other people are thinking. You're always on high alert, scanning for any sign of disapproval. And that anxiety leads directly to decision paralysis. Because every choice, no matter how small, feels like it carries the weight of potential rejection. You just freeze. The short-term pain of saying no feels way scarier than the long-term cost of saying yes to something you don't want. And over time, this constant self-suppression leads to a profound loss of personal identity. You literally forget what you want. You forget what you believe. Your identity just becomes about how useful you are to other people. And the whole thing is fueled by this high sensitivity to disapproval, where even a neutral look can feel like a disaster, which of course just fires up the anxiety all over again.
And this is the bottom line. This is the end result of that whole cycle. It's a systematic outsourcing of your self-worth. You've effectively handed over the keys to your own emotional well-being. Your sense of value isn't an internal, stable thing you own anymore. Nope. It becomes a fluctuating currency, kind of like a stock price, and its value is decided entirely by the whims of other people. And let me be clear, this is not an accident. It's the intended outcome of a very specific psychological system that is designed for control. So let's look at how that system is actually built. All right, now we're shifting gears from the what to the how. We're about to look under the hood and deconstruct the mechanics of this control system. Think of it like an engine, with specific parts that all work together. And understanding how the machine works is the absolute first step to taking it apart. This whole system, it's all built on one single foundation, External Validation Dependency, or EVD. This is the core vulnerability. For a lot of people, it's a state that's conditioned from a very young age, and it's rooted in what's known as attachment anxiety, that deep primal fear of being abandoned by the people we depend on. So when you have EVD, you don't just prefer praise, you actually require it to feel okay. And its absence feels like a fundamental threat to who you are. This dependency, this is the fuel for the entire control engine. So how does someone weaponize that dependency? Well, it's a two-part structure. First, you have the leverage point, emotional gatekeeping. A manipulator cleverly positions themselves as the only source of the validation you're craving. They become the gatekeeper of your self-worth, and they strategically hand out praise to control your behavior. And that's where the trap closes, status dependency. Your emotional stability, your status in your own head, becomes completely dependent on their unpredictable approval. You're now constantly chasing their praise, because without it, your internal world just feels like chaos. And that is the exact moment control shifts from you to them. And this is the engine that runs that whole system on a continuous loop. Let's walk through it.
It starts with number one, compliance. Because you're afraid of disapproval, you accommodate them. You suppress your own needs. You say yes when you really mean no. Which leads to step two, sporadic validation. Now, the controller doesn't praise you all the time. That'd be too easy. Instead, they give you unpredictable, intermittent approval. This is absolutely key. Then, when they finally give you that little bit of validation, you hit step three, fear relief. Notice, it's not joy, it's relief. The crushing anxiety of being rejected is gone. For a moment. And that feeling of relief is so powerful that it leads to step four, reinforcement. Your brain learns that your high-effort compliance was worth it, which just strengthens the entire loop, making you even more likely to comply next time. But you might be wondering, why is this loop so incredibly hard to break? Why does it feel less like a choice and more like a compulsion? That's what we're going to dig into now. We're going deeper into the psychology here to really understand the mechanisms that make this whole system so powerful and, frankly, so addictive. The answer is really all in our neuroscience. This system works because it literally hijacks your brain's reward pathways. That sporadic validation we just talked about, that's a powerful conditioning tool called intermittent reinforcement. It is the exact same principle that makes slot machines in Vegas so addictive. The unpredictability of the reward makes the seeking behavior way stronger and way more resistant to quitting than if the reward was predictable. Your brain doesn't get hooked on the approval itself, it gets hooked on the possibility of approval and the intense relief that comes when you finally get it. It's a neurological trap, plain and simple. And this addictive loop, it comes with massive psychological costs that keep you stuck. I mean, just look at this breakdown. A huge 50% of the cost is cognitive load. All that constant anxiety and the effort of managing someone else's emotions. It's exhausting. Your brain is so busy processing the threat and seeking approval that it has very little bandwidth left for anything else. Then you've got 30%, the identity threat. The fear of being disliked, of being called selfish. It feels like a threat to your very existence. And finally, those two things combine to create the last 20%, that decision paralysis we talked about. You're just too overwhelmed and too afraid to make a different choice.
So when you lay it all out like this, you can see just how bad the bargain really is. You are trading a moment of fleeting approval for your long-term agency. You're trading a little bit of immediate anxiety relief for chronic, soul-crushing instability. You're trading the illusion of safety for a total loss of self-worth. It is a deal that guarantees you lose in the long run, and it's designed to keep you trapped in a system where you are always vulnerable. So that brings us to the most important question of all. Okay, we know the architecture of the trap. We know how it works. But how do you actually get out? How do you dismantle this system when it feels so deeply wired into your brain and even your body? This is where we pivot from analysis to action. So we're going to give you a clear, actionable strategy. And listen, this isn't about just thinking positive or some vague advice to love yourself more. This is a protocol. It's a set of tactical steps designed specifically to neutralize that control loop and help you reclaim your agency. To break free, you first have to learn to recognize the signal. And the signal that the system has been activated, it's physiological. It's that immediate, deep wave of anxiety that hits you in the gut when you're about to say no. You feel it, right? A knot in your stomach, your heart starts racing, your chest gets tight. That feeling, that's not just you being nervous. That is the feedback loop activating. That's your conditioning kicking in, screaming at you that rejection is coming. And recognizing that feeling for what it is, a signal, not a fact, that is the first crucial step to freedom. Okay, so you feel that alarm go off. Now what do? You implement this two-step protocol. First, you deploy the time barrier. This is your circuit breaker. Instead of a panicked, fear-driven yes, you say something like, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you," or "I need to think about that for a second." This simple phrase creates space. It gives your nervous system a chance to calm down, and it disconnects that fear-based impulse from your decision. And in that space, you move to step 2. You apply value-based autonomy. You stop asking, "What will they think if I say no?" and you start asking a much more powerful question. Does doing this align with my long-term goals and my core values? You are shifting the entire basis of the decision from external to internal. Let's be really clear about why this works so well. These two steps are a direct counterattack on the control system. The time barrier physically breaks that addictive validation compliance loop. It starves the cycle of its immediacy. And then value-based autonomy, that's your long-term solution. It's the slow, steady work of rebuilding your internal infrastructure, your self-worth. Every single time you make a decision based on your own values, you strengthen your own self-trust. You're building an internal source of validation that makes the external kind less necessary, and therefore way less powerful.
And this brings us to the ultimate strategic takeaway here. Volatility is vulnerability. Stability is the most valuable power resource. Think about it. A person whose emotional state is volatile, totally dependent on the unpredictable approval of others, is fundamentally vulnerable. They can be controlled. So the most valuable resource you can possibly have isn't money or status. It's internal stability. It's the ability to generate your own sense of worth, to stay steady, whether you get praise or criticism. That is true agency. That is what it means to dismantle this whole architecture of approval and finally be controlled by a need you no longer have. So I'll leave you with this question. What one need, if you could let it go today, would set you free?